The council chamber stretched wide and tall with walls that glowed a soft blue. Representatives from 17 different alien species sat in a circle around the massive holographic display at the center. Captain Kang Minho stood straight in his Earth military uniform, feeling the eyes of countless beings watching him. Next to him stood Lieutenant Park Ji-woo, her datapad ready, and Ambassador Choi Yuna, who wore the calm expression of someone who had negotiated through worse situations. The hologram flickered to life, showing a green planet covered in thick forests. Commander Thex, an insectoid creature with multiple arms and compound eyes, gestured toward the image with one of his limbs. "This is Verdantis 7, Commander Thex announced, his voice translated through the universal system. "The Ravagers have established hidden bases throughout this jungle world. We need ground forces to eliminate them." The alien representatives murmured among themselves. The Vren warlord, a massive figure covered in cybernetic enhancements and armor plating, leaned forward in his seat. His mechanical eye zoomed in on the planet's surface. "A jungle world," the warlord said with clear distaste. "Inefficient terrain, difficult to navigate with proper equipment. This will require our most advanced hover units and aerial support." Captain Kang Minho raised his hand. "Earth would like to volunteer our special forces for this operation. We have extensive experience in jungle warfare." The chamber fell silent for a moment, then laughter began. It started with a few chuckles and grew into full laughter from several species. The Vren warlord's metallic face somehow managed to look amused. "Did the human just say they have jungle experience?" The warlord stood up, his massive frame intimidating even at a distance. "Tell me, Captain, why does your species still maintain such primitive environments on your world?" Kang Minho kept his face neutral. "Earth has preserved many natural environments. We believe they serve important purposes." The warlord turned to address the entire council. "Ladies and gentlemen, let me show you what the humans consider an asset." He manipulated the controls and the hologram changed. Images of Earth appeared, showing dense rainforests, towering mountains, and vast jungles filled with vegetation. "Look at this," the warlord continued, his voice dripping with mockery. "In the year 2187, the humans still allow dangerous predators to roam freely on their planet. They have diseases that spread through insect bites. They maintain forests so thick that their own people can barely walk through them. While civilized species have terraformed their worlds into efficient training grounds and controlled environments, humans cling to these ecological museums." More laughter rippled through the chamber. A delegate from the Kellian species, beings who could phase through solid matter, spoke up. "We eliminated our planet's wilderness areas 3,000 years ago. It was a mark of our advancement. How can warriors trained in such chaos possibly match soldiers raised in optimal conditions?" Park Ji-woo's hand tightened on her datapad, but she said nothing. Kang Minho remained still. The warlord pulled up more images. "They have poisonous plants, terrain without infrastructure, weather patterns they cannot fully predict, and they send their soldiers to train in these places deliberately." He shook his head. "It's almost quaint, like maintaining ancient weapons in a museum." Commander Thex raised a limb for silence. "The human military has proven itself capable in space operations. Their adaptability in ship-to-ship combat is impressive. However, ground operations on a hostile jungle world require precision, technology, and warriors bred for specific combat conditions." General Kryl, commander of the Vren ground forces, stood beside his warlord. His genetic enhancements were visible even through his armor. Muscles enhanced beyond natural limits. Cybernetic implants giving him capabilities far beyond baseline biology. "My soldiers are perfected warriors," Kryl stated. "We have conquered 47 worlds. Each of my troops has infrared vision, reinforced skeletal systems, neural combat networks that allow instant tactical coordination, and immunity to most known toxins. They train in virtual simulations that can replicate any environment with perfect accuracy." He looked at Kang Minho. "What do your soldiers have? Experience walking through muddy forests? Knowing which plants are poisonous? These are problems our technology solved millennia ago." Ambassador Choi Yuna stepped forward, her voice calm and diplomatic. "We understand the Council's concerns. Earth's forces are prepared to serve in whatever capacity you deem appropriate." Commander Thex manipulated the hologram again, showing 3 target locations on Verdantis 7. "The operation will proceed as follows. The Vren forces will assault Target Alpha, the primary Ravager command base. The Kellian phase units will infiltrate target Beta. The mech's armored divisions will secure target Gamma. The operation should take no more than 3 standard days. And the humans? Someone asked. Thex barely glanced at them. Earth forces will provide rear support and intelligence gathering at already secured locations. They will extract data from abandoned Ravager facilities after our main forces have moved forward. The vote was quick. 17 species approved the plan. Earth's delegation accepted their assignment without protest. As they left the chamber, Park Ji-woo walked close to her captain. The corridor outside was empty, allowing them to speak freely. They have no idea, she muttered quietly. Kang Min-ho's expression remained neutral, but his eyes held something knowing. No, they don't. Ambassador Choi Yuna walked slightly ahead, her posture perfect. Let them learn. We tried to tell them. They reached the transport dock where their ship waited. Through the massive viewport, they could see Verdantis 7 in the distance, a green jewel hanging in space. To the aliens, it was a challenging obstacle. To the humans, it looked familiar. Park Ji-woo pulled up specifications on her datapad. Dense jungle canopy, high humidity, extreme biodiversity, predatory fauna, limited visibility. She had trained in environments just like this on Earth, in places the aliens considered museums. Captain, she said softly, the Amazon would be harder than this. Kang Min-ho nodded once. So would the Congo, or Papua New Guinea, or a dozen other places we train. He paused, looking at the planet. They spent millennia eliminating every challenge from their worlds. They forgot what those challenges taught. In the council chamber behind them, the alien commanders were already celebrating their upcoming victory. The Vren warlord was showing footage of past conquest to younger officers. Each victory achieved through overwhelming technological superiority. The humans will watch and learn how real warriors operate, he told his subordinates. Perhaps they will finally understand that maintaining primitive conditions on their world is a mistake. But in the Earth transport ship, Captain Kang Min-ho was briefing his team. Major Lee Dong-hae listened carefully, his weathered face showing the experience of someone who had survived 15 jungle campaigns. Sergeant Kim Soo-min studied the terrain maps, her eyes picking out details the alien scans had missed. Corporal Baek Ji-ho was already researching the planet's plant life, looking for useful compounds. They did not laugh at the aliens. They did not mock their confidence. They simply prepared, using skills learned in places the galaxy considered backwards. The jungle was waiting, and the jungle always taught lessons to those who thought they had nothing left to learn. The transport fleet moved through space like a swarm of metal insects, each ship carrying soldiers and equipment toward Verdantis 7. Inside the Vren warship Absolute Victory, General Krill walked through rows of his perfect warriors. Each soldier stood at attention, their enhanced bodies barely contained by advanced armor. Their eyes glowed with cybernetic implants. Their muscles rippled with genetic modifications. They were the product of 3,000 years of biological engineering and military science. Krill stopped before a holographic display showing the jungle planet ahead. This will be a simple operation, he announced to his assembled troops. The enemy hides in primitive conditions, thinking the environment will protect them. They are wrong. Our technology makes terrain irrelevant. His soldiers responded with a unified acknowledgement through their neural network. Each warrior's mind was connected to the others, allowing instant tactical coordination. They could share sensory data, coordinate movements perfectly, and respond to threats with machine precision. In the cramped quarters assigned to Earth's forces on a separate transport ship, the atmosphere was completely different. Major Lee Dong-hae sat with his team of 36 operators around a portable display. Unlike the aliens with their vast armies, the human contingent was small, almost an afterthought to the massive galactic force. Limited intelligence, Lee said, scrolling through what little data they had been given. Satellite imagery shows 3 main target areas, but the canopy is too thick for detailed scans. Sergeant Kim Soo-min leaned forward, studying the images closely. Look at the vegetation density here, she pointed. And these darker areas, that's probably standing water. The ground will be soft, maybe swampy in places. Corporal Baek Ji-ho pulled up botanical data. The plant life is similar to Earth's tropical environments. High probability of thorns, poisonous species, and dense undergrowth. The aliens won't be able to use their hover vehicles effectively. Weather patterns, Lee asked. Constant rain, high humidity, Temperature stays between 25 and 35 degrees. Perfect breeding ground for insects. Kim Suman pulled up more data. The animal life is aggressive. Several predatory species in the apex categories. Master Sergeant Huang Jun, the oldest member of the team at 41, smiled slightly. Sounds like home. The younger soldiers chuckled. They had all trained in Earth's preserved wilderness areas. The Amazon, the Congo Basin, the jungles of Papua New Guinea, the mountains of Korea. Places where technology failed and survival depended on knowledge, skill, and adaptation. Meanwhile, aboard the flagship, Commander Thex was briefing the combined alien forces. Representatives from all participating species watched as he displayed the battle plan. Phase 1 begins with simultaneous orbital insertion at 3 coordinates, Thex explained. The Vren ground forces will deploy 10,000 soldiers at Target Alpha, with full mechanized support. Hover tanks, automated drones, energy weapons, and force field generators. The display showed a massive assault force descending on the jungle like a hammer. The Kellian phase units will infiltrate Target Beta, using their natural abilities to pass through solid matter. Once inside enemy structures, they will neutralize threats and secure the facility. The Kellian commander nodded. Confident in his species' unique advantage, the mech's armored divisions will establish a forward base at Target Gamma and systematically clear the area, using their siege platforms. The mech's representative, a heavily armored being whose species had evolved on a high-gravity world, confirmed readiness. Earth forces will remain in orbit until sites are secured, then deploy for intelligence gathering and site analysis. Captain Kang Minho sat in the back of the briefing room watching the presentation. Park Ji-woo sat beside him taking notes. Neither of them spoke, but their eyes met briefly. They both saw the same problems. The alien forces were planning to fight the jungle the same way they fought in space or on their controlled worlds. They expected their technology to overcome every obstacle. They had never learned that some environments required more than superior firepower. After the briefing, Park Ji-woo found a quiet corner and contacted Major Lee on a secure channel. "They're going to walk straight into a nightmare," she said quietly. Lee's face appeared on her screen. "I know, but we can't tell them. They won't listen until they learn the hard way. How many will die before they listen?" Lee was quiet for a moment. "Hopefully not too many. We'll be ready when they call for help." Back in his quarters, General Krill reviewed his force composition with pride. Every soldier was equipped with the latest weapons. Their armor could withstand extreme temperatures and most projectile weapons. Their sensors could detect heat signatures through walls. Their communication systems were unhackable. He pulled up footage from previous campaigns. On a desert world, his forces had crushed local resistance in 18 hours. On an ice planet, they had eliminated all opposition in 2 days. Every battle followed the same pattern. Overwhelming technological superiority led to swift victory. Verdanti 7 would be no different. Sergeant Kim Suman couldn't sleep, so she spent the night studying everything she could find about the target planet. The Galactic database had basic information: plant types, animal species, atmospheric conditions. But it was all clinical observational data. Nobody had studied how these elements interacted, how the ecosystem functioned, how the environment would affect military operations. She had seen this before. Advanced species spent so long in controlled environments that they forgot how to read nature's signs. They could identify 1,000 species but couldn't tell which ones indicated nearby water sources. They could measure humidity precisely but didn't understand how it would affect their equipment. She made notes. Canopy will block aerial drones. Humidity will interfere with electronics. Dense undergrowth will tangle hover vehicles. Insects will be attracted to heat signatures and electrical fields. Predators will investigate sounds and movement. Every advantage the aliens counted on would become a liability in the jungle. As the fleet entered orbit around Verdantis 7, the entire force gathered at observation decks to see their target. The planet loomed before them, covered in green so deep it appeared almost black. Storm systems swirled across the surface. The jungle was vast, covering entire continents without break. The Vren warlord stood at the main viewport, his cybernetic eye analyzing the planet. "A primitive world," he said to his officers. "Barely touched by civilization. The Ravagers chose well to hide here, but they underestimate our capabilities." Several levels below, in the human quarters, Major Lee Donghae stood at a smaller viewport with his team. They looked at the same planet and saw something different. "That's not a primitive world," Lee said quietly. "That's the most advanced training ground in this sector of space. Every species down there has been competing for survival for millions of years. It's perfected every possible way to hunt, hide, defend, and attack. The Ravagers know this. That's why they chose it." Private O. Taijin, the youngest human soldier at 21, stared at the planet. "It looks angry." "It's not angry," Sergeant Kim Suman said. "It's just alive. Really truly alive in a way these aliens haven't experienced in thousands of years. Their worlds are gardens. That down there? That's wilderness. And wilderness doesn't care about your technology." The fleet began final preparations for ground deployment. Thousands of alien soldiers checked their equipment, loaded their weapons, and prepared for what they expected to be a quick, clean operation. The human soldiers prepared differently. They checked simple gear: knives, rope, basic medical supplies, conventional weapons. They reviewed hand signals and non-electronic communication methods. They discussed terrain navigation techniques and survival priorities. Captain Kang Minho sent one final message to Major Lee: "Show restraint. Let them attempt their plan. Only intervene if called upon. Make sure every action counts when the time comes." Lee acknowledged and gathered his team. "We watch, we wait, we learn. When they need us, we'll be ready." The next morning, deployment began. The sky above Verdantis 7 filled with descending craft, carrying the galaxy's finest warriors toward a jungle that had been waiting for millions of years. The first dropships pierced through the thick clouds surrounding Verdantis 7 just after dawn. General Krill led the Vren assault force down through the morning mist, watching his tactical display light up with thousands of friendly markers. 10,000 perfect warriors, 200 hover tanks, 500 automated drones, and enough firepower to level a city. The display showed clear landing zones, marked pathways, and enemy positions detected by orbital scans. The ships touched down in a clearing that had looked perfect from orbit. The moment the ramps dropped, reality hit them like a physical force. The heat was oppressive, the humidity so thick it felt like breathing water. The jungle pressed in on all sides, a wall of green that seemed alive and hostile. Krill's enhanced senses immediately registered problems. His infrared vision showed heat signatures everywhere, thousands of them, making it impossible to distinguish between animal life and potential enemies. His audio sensors picked up so many sounds they almost overloaded. His tactical network struggled to maintain connections through the dense vegetation. "Forward," he commanded anyway, and his perfect warriors began their advance. Within the first hour, everything started going wrong. The hover tanks, designed to float effortlessly over any terrain, couldn't maintain altitude. The jungle undergrowth was too dense, too tangled. Plants wrapped around anti-gravity generators. Thorns punctured delicate sensor arrays. The tanks had to either rise above the canopy, where they became easy targets, or try to push through vegetation that fought back. The automated drones fared even worse. The thick canopy blocked their sensors. Their navigation systems, calibrated for open terrain or space, couldn't process the three-dimensional maze of branches, vines, and leaves. Within 90 minutes, half the drone fleet was lost to collisions, entanglements, or simple system failures caused by the humidity. The soldiers themselves, enhanced and armored, discovered that their improvements meant nothing to the jungle. Their infrared vision saw everything, which meant it was useless. Their audio enhancement picked up every sound in a jungle that never stopped making noise. Their neural networks, designed for instant coordination, became confused when squad members lost line of sight with each other after moving just a few meters. And then there were the insects. Millions of them. They swarmed the soldiers, attracted to heat signatures and electromagnetic fields from their equipment. They found gaps in armor, crawled into weapons, shorted out electronics. The soldiers' toxin immunity protected them from poison, but not from the maddening distraction of insects covering every exposed surface. General Krill tried to adapt. He ordered his forces to burn a path forward using plasma weapons. Trees exploded into flames, vegetation disintegrated, and for a moment it seemed to work. They carved a burning corridor through the jungle. Then the Ravagers attacked. They came from above and below simultaneously, using the smoke and chaos as cover. The Ravagers had learned to fight in this environment. They swung through the canopy, fired from concealed positions, and disappeared before the Vren soldiers could respond. They emerged from hidden tunnels in the forest floor, struck and vanished. The Vren warriors, trained for precision combat with clear sight lines and organized formations, struggled to respond to threats from every direction. Their neural networks couldn't process the chaos. Individual soldiers were making decisions, but those decisions weren't coordinated. The perfect unity that made them unstoppable in controlled environments became confusion in the jungle. The Kellian phase shifters encountered different problems at target Beta. Their ability to pass through solid matter was legendary, but it required them to know where they were going. In the dense jungle, visibility was 5 meters at best. They phased through trees and vines, trying to reach the enemy base, but kept getting separated. The jungle was too thick, too confusing. Soldiers who phased into the ground found themselves lost in root systems. Those who tried to move through the air found themselves tangled in canopy branches they couldn't see. The mech's armored divisions at Target Gamma had perhaps the worst experience. Their massive siege platforms, designed for high-gravity worlds, sank into the soft jungle floor. What looked like solid ground from orbit was actually a thin crust over deep mud and swamp water. Their heavy armor, their greatest advantage, became an anchor dragging them down. Soldiers who fell into hidden water couldn't get up. Equipment disappeared into mud that swallowed it whole. While the galaxy's finest forces struggled and died, Major Lee Donghae led his 36 operators into the jungle near Target Beta. They moved in a formation perfected in Earth's Congo Basin: loose spacing, multiple elevation levels, constant rotation of the point position. Every 6th step they stopped and listened. Every 100 meters they checked their surroundings. Sergeant Kim Suman was on point. She moved through the jungle like a ghost, reading signs that the aliens couldn't see. Broken branches told her something large had passed recently. Disturbed leaf litter showed direction of travel. Bird behavior warned her of threats ahead. She didn't fight the jungle. She became part of it. When they encountered Ravager scouts, the humans didn't announce their presence with energy weapons or networked communications. Corporal Beck Jiho moved silently to a position overlooking the enemy route. He had spent the first hour collecting local plants, identifying which ones produced strong scents. He created a compound that smelled like wounded prey and spread it along a path leading away from his team's position. 20 minutes later, one of the jungle's apex predators followed the scent and found the Ravager scouts instead. The screams were brief. Private Otejan handled other encounters differently. When they spotted a Ravager sentry post, he didn't assault it directly. He took a position 70 meters away, concealed in the canopy, and waited. When the sentries changed shifts, he used a suppressed conventional rifle to eliminate them one by one. No energy signature to detect, no sound to pinpoint, just silent, patient hunting. The human team reached their observation point overlooking Target Beta by mid-afternoon. Instead of attacking, Major Lee ordered them to establish a concealed camp. They used natural materials, local vegetation, and techniques learned from indigenous peoples on Earth. Within an hour, their position was invisible from 10 feet away. They could watch the Ravager base and the struggling Kellian forces in the distance. Staff Sergeant Yoon Hana set up communications equipment, but she wasn't using it to transmit. She was listening. She intercepted Ravager communications and noticed something interesting. The enemy wasn't using radio or digital systems. They were using natural sounds, mimicking local animals to coordinate movements. They're smart, she told Major Lee. They adapted to the environment instead of trying to force the environment to adapt to them. Lee nodded, watching Kellian soldiers stumbling through the jungle below, lost and confused. That's the difference between surviving in the wilderness and trying to conquer it. As darkness fell, the situation grew desperate for the galactic forces. Night in the jungle was complete darkness. The aliens' technology should have overcome this, but their light amplification systems were overwhelmed by bioluminescent plants and insects. Their infrared sensors showed heat signatures everywhere but couldn't distinguish between threats and harmless animals. The Ravagers, who had lived in this jungle for months, moved freely in the darkness. They attacked and disappeared like ghosts. The casualties mounted. On the command channel, panic started to show. General Krill's voice had lost its confidence. The Kellian commander was requesting emergency extraction. The mech's forces reported they were completely immobilized and under constant attack. Commander Thex, watching from orbit, couldn't understand what was happening. His superior forces, his advanced technology, his perfect warriors were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that shouldn't have stood a chance. Captain Kang Minho's voice came through clearly on the command channel, calm and steady. Commander Thex, Earth's Special Forces are in position and ready to assist. We request permission to begin active operations. There was a long pause. Then quietly Thex responded. Permission granted. Please help them. In the jungle darkness, Major Lee received the authorization. He looked at his team, all of them comfortable in conditions that had broken the galaxy's finest soldiers in less than a day. Time to go to work, he said simply. The humans moved into the night like they owned it, because in the jungle, in the darkness, using skills learned in Earth's wildest places, they did. The transformation happened in clearings throughout the jungle over the next 4 days. The Galactic Council's perfect warriors became students, and their teachers were humans who had never stopped learning from the wilderness. In spaces carved from the dense vegetation, human special forces operators conducted training. Courses that covered fundamentals the aliens had forgotten existed. Sergeant Nam Yunji worked with groups of shell-shocked alien soldiers who were experiencing something their species hadn't felt in millennia: fear of the natural environment. These beings had been raised in controlled habitats, trained in perfect simulations, and deployed to worlds their species had already tamed. The chaos of real wilderness was breaking them psychologically. She sat with a group of Vren warriors, their enhanced bodies covered in mud and insect bites, their confidence shattered. Fear is normal, she told them. Every human soldier feels it the first time they enter real wilderness. The jungle wants to kill you. Accept that truth. A Vren soldier, his cybernetic eye malfunctioning and showing error codes, asked, "How do you overcome it?" "You don't overcome it. You acknowledge it and work with it." Nam gestured to the jungle around them. "This environment has been perfecting ways to kill things for millions of years. Respect that. Learn from it. The moment you think you've conquered the jungle, it will teach you otherwise." She spent hours teaching concepts that seemed basic to humans but were revolutionary to aliens. How to maintain focus when every sense is overwhelmed. How to distinguish between real threats and background chaos. How to stay calm when you can't see more than a few meters in any direction. How to trust your training when technology fails. In another clearing, Corporal Baek Jiho taught jungle medicine and botany to a mixed group of alien medics. They sat surrounded by plants they had catalogued as poisonous or useless, watching as he demonstrated their practical applications. "This vine produces a toxin that causes paralysis," he explained, cutting a section carefully. "Your databases mark it as extremely dangerous. You're right, but extract the compound correctly, dilute it properly, and it becomes an anesthetic. The same plant that kills can heal." He showed them fungus that grew on rotting trees, demonstrating how to identify beneficial species versus deadly ones. He taught them to process bark into fever reducers, roots into antibiotics, and leaves into antiseptics. Life on Earth never stopped competing, he said. Plants developed chemical weapons. Animals developed defenses. Bacteria evolved constantly. Humans survived by learning to use these weapons ourselves. An alien medic, watching Bayek create medicine from materials they considered primitive, asked, "Why didn't you synthesize these compounds artificially?" "We do," Beck said. "But synthesis requires laboratories and equipment. In the field, surrounded by enemies, equipment fails. Knowledge doesn't. A human medic can keep soldiers alive using nothing but what grows around them. Can your medics do that?" The silence answered his question. Master Sergeant Huang Jun, the oldest operator, became legendary among the alien forces. He taught classes in what he called low-tech, high-effect warfare to soldiers who had never imagined fighting without energy weapons and advanced armor. He demonstrated how to construct deadfalls that could kill creatures many times his size. He showed them pit traps that could capture or eliminate enemies silently. He taught them to create snares from natural fibers, stakes from hardwood, and barriers from thorn bushes. He explained camouflage using local materials, creating blinds that made soldiers invisible at 5 meters. The Vren warlord himself attended one of these sessions, watching this gray-haired human create an entire defensive perimeter using nothing but what the jungle provided. When Huang finished, the warlord asked, "How long have humans been using these techniques? These specific methods?" "Maybe 10,000 years, Huang said. "But the principles? Probably longer than we've been recognizably human. Our ancestors survived predators bigger and stronger than them using these tactics." The warlord looked at his enhanced soldiers, perfect products of genetic engineering. We eliminated weakness from our species. We thought it made us strong. It made you capable, Huang corrected gently. But survival isn't about capability alone. It's about adaptability. You can't engineer solutions to problems you haven't encountered yet. But if you learn to read the environment, use what's available, and adapt constantly, you can overcome anything. Lieutenant Park Jiwoo ran intelligence training sessions, teaching alien analysts to gather information without advanced sensors. She demonstrated how to track enemy movements by reading disturbances in vegetation. She showed them how to predict weather using cloud patterns and animal behavior. She taught them that communication could be maintained using natural sounds, light signals, and physical markers. Your technology is impressive, she told a group of analysts used to orbital surveillance and electronic intelligence. But this jungle proved that technology fails. The best intelligence network is the ecosystem itself. She taught them to observe bird behavior to detect hidden enemies, to watch insect patterns to identify safe water sources, to read plant growth to determine underground structures, to use smell, often ignored by species dependent on visual and electronic sensors, to detect everything from nearby predators to enemy camps. A Kellyan analyst, whose species had relied on phase shifting and advanced sensors for centuries, asked how did humans develop these skills? We never had a choice, Park said simply. Our planet never let us forget that we were part of nature, not above it. Every generation had to learn or die. The skills accumulated over thousands of years because Earth kept testing us. By day 7, General Krill had changed completely. The proud warrior who had mocked human jungle training now spent every moment learning from Major Lee. They moved through the jungle together, Krill asking constant questions, Lee providing answers drawn from 15 campaigns in Earth's wildest places. On your world, Krill asked during a patrol, you maintain wilderness areas deliberately. Why? Lee stopped listening to the jungle around them before answering. Because we learned something your species forgot. Comfort and safety have value, but they also have costs. When everything is controlled, safe, and predictable, you lose the ability to handle chaos. We kept our wild places as reminders that nature is stronger than civilization. They keep us humble. They keep us sharp. We thought we had evolved beyond needing such places. Evolution doesn't work that way, Lee said. Your species spent millions of years adapting to survive in natural environments. Then in just a few thousand years, you removed all natural challenges. Your genetics remember the old world even if your culture doesn't. That's why this jungle breaks your soldiers' minds. They have instincts for wilderness survival, but no training to support those instincts. Krill absorbed this, understanding dawning. You're saying we de-evolved ourselves. I'm saying you forgot important lessons. But you're learning again. That's what matters. On day 8, the combined force was ready. The final Ravager stronghold waited, a fortress built into massive ancient trees. The original galactic plan would have been orbital bombardment. But bombing the jungle would destroy the lessons learned. Instead, Major Lee designed an assault that used everything the mixed force had learned. The approach began at dawn. Teams moved through the jungle using human navigation techniques, but enhanced by alien technology where it was useful. Kellyan phase shifters, now trained to navigate by terrain features rather than coordinates, infiltrated through route systems that Sergeant Kim had mapped. Vren warriors, taught to move quietly and read their environment, approached from angles the enemy didn't expect. Mech soldiers shown how to use terrain for cover rather than relying on armor alone, established positions that controlled key approaches. The assault was coordinated using natural signals and minimal electronic communication. Bird calls, light flashes, physical markers. The Ravagers' advanced sensors couldn't distinguish tactical signals from jungle background noise. When the attack came, it came from everywhere. The fortress fell not to superior firepower but to warriors who had learned to belong in the jungle. The Ravagers, who had survived by adapting to this environment, faced enemies who had learned faster and better. When the fortress fell, General Krill found Major Lee among the ruins. The Vren warrior, covered in mud and blood, clasped arms with the human. You gave us back something precious, Krill said. Our ancestors once survived on worlds like this. They adapted, they struggled, they learned. We thought eliminating struggle was progress. You showed us we threw away the very thing that made us strong. Lee looked at the jungle surrounding them, alive and indifferent to their victory. The wilderness doesn't care about our plans or pride. It tests everyone equally. Some of us just remembered to keep taking the test. Sergeant Kim approached, reporting casualties. They had lost soldiers, human and alien both. The jungle had taken its price, but it had also given gifts: knowledge, humility, strength. As the sun set on day 8, the survivors gathered in a clearing. Humans and aliens sat together, sharing food and stories. The barriers of species and culture had burned away in the jungle's crucible. What remained were warriors who had learned the oldest lesson: adapt or die. Day 2 began with rain, not the gentle rain of controlled weather systems on civilized worlds, but a tropical downpour that turned the jungle floor into a river of mud. The surviving galactic forces huddled in whatever shelter they could find, their equipment failing, their confidence shattered. Casualties had reached 40% overnight. Soldiers who had never known defeat were broken, scared, and lost. Lieutenant Park Ji-woo established a forward command post in a naturally protected area that the human team had identified. She set up communication equipment and began coordinating rescue operations. Her first message to the scattered alien forces was simple: stop fighting the jungle. We're coming to get you. Commander Thex had granted full operational authority to the human forces. It was a stunning reversal, a humiliation for the proud alien commanders, but pride meant nothing when soldiers were dying. The galaxy's greatest military minds now answered to a species they had mocked 2 days earlier. Major Lee Dong-hae split his 36 operators into 6-person teams. Each team had a specific mission: locate, extract, and train groups of surviving alien soldiers. They moved out into the rain like it was nothing, because they had trained in worse conditions on Earth. Master Sergeant Hwang Jun led his team toward a group of trapped Vren warriors. The aliens were surrounded, pinned down by Ravager forces that attacked from all directions. The Vren had tried to establish a defensive perimeter, but their tactics assumed clear sight lines and organized enemy approaches. In the jungle, such assumptions were fatal. Hwang's team didn't attack directly. Instead, they spent 2 hours modifying the terrain. They identified the paths the Ravagers were using to approach the Vren position. Along those paths, they constructed deadfalls using heavy logs and natural triggers. They dug pit traps and concealed them with leaf litter and vines. They used the landscape itself, channeling enemy movement into killing zones where the terrain would do the work. When the Ravagers launched their next attack, they ran straight into traps that had been waiting for prey for millions of years, now adapted by human hands. Logs fell on advancing squads. Pits opened beneath running feet. The jungle became a weapon. The Vren warriors watched in stunned silence as their enemies were decimated without a single shot being fired. When Hwang's team finally revealed themselves, approaching from angles the aliens hadn't even considered watching, the Vren soldiers looked at these humans with new eyes. General Krill was among the survivors. His perfect armor was scratched and mud-covered. His cybernetic enhancements were malfunctioning from moisture damage. He looked at Hwang Jun, this gray-haired human who moved through the jungle like water, and asked the only question that mattered: how? Hwang smiled slightly. The jungle is a weapon, General. You just have to know how to use it. Sergeant Kim Soo-man's mission was to find the lost Kellyan phase shifters. These beings could pass through solid matter, making them incredibly difficult to track. But Kim didn't use technology to find them. She used skills learned from trackers in Earth's most remote regions. She read the jungle like a book. Disturbed moss on a tree trunk showed where someone had grabbed for balance. Broken spider webs indicated recent passage. Scent trails, invisible to technology but obvious to trained senses, led her to areas where the aliens had stopped to rest. She followed pressure marks in the soil, slight displacements of leaves, even changes in insect behavior that indicated large creatures had passed through recently. When she found the Kellyan soldiers, they were huddled together, completely lost. Their ability to phase through matter meant nothing when they couldn't see where they were going, or coordinate their movements. Their commander, a being who had led successful missions on dozens of worlds, looked defeated. Kim approached them slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. I'm here to help, she said simply. But first you need to understand something. Your abilities are impressive, but they're useless if you don't know where you are or where you're going. She spent the next hour teaching them basics. How to identify landmarks, how to use the sun's position even through thick canopy, how to read plant growth patterns to determine direction, how to listen to the jungle and distinguish between dangerous sounds and background noise. One of the Kellyan soldiers asked, "Why doesn't your species have special abilities like ours?" Kim smiled. We do. We can adapt. We can learn. We can survive anywhere because we don't rely on one special trick. The jungle taught us that flexibility beats specialization. Corporal Beck Jiho established a field hospital in a dry cave his team had located. Wounded alien soldiers were carried in by human operators, suffering from infections, toxins, and injuries that alien medicine couldn't treat. The problem was that these species had been living in sterile environments for so long that their immune systems couldn't handle the jungle's microscopic threats. Beck moved through his makeshift hospital, applying poultices made from local plants, treating infections with natural compounds, and explaining basic field medicine to alien medics who had only ever worked with advanced equipment. "This plant here," he said, grinding leaves into a paste, "reduces inflammation and fights bacterial infection. Your scanners probably identified it as poisonous, and it is if you eat it. But applied externally, it's medicine." An alien medic watched in fascination. "We eliminated all dangerous plants from our worlds. We never considered they might have beneficial properties." "That's the problem," Bayek said, applying the paste to a soldier's infected wound. "You eliminated the challenges, but challenges teach you things. Every plant on Earth has been trying to kill or heal things for millions of years. We learned which is which because we had to. Meanwhile, human operators began hunting Ravagers using tactics that seemed impossible to the alien forces. Private Otajan moved through the canopy like a shadow. He had grown up in the mountains of Korea, learning to hunt in difficult terrain from his grandfather. The jungle canopy was different but followed similar principles. He identified Ravager positions by watching how the jungle reacted to them. Birds avoiding certain areas indicated predators below. Changes in insect behavior showed where large creatures moved. He learned the Ravagers' patterns, their patrol routes, their communication methods. When he struck, it was silent and sudden. A Ravager sentry would be there one moment and gone the next, eliminated from a position the enemy never thought to watch. He moved after each action, never staying in one place, using the three-dimensional space of the jungle the way the Ravagers did, but better. The Ravagers, who had considered themselves apex predators on Verdantis 7, began to fear the darkness. Stories spread among them of ghosts in the jungle, silent killers who appeared from nowhere. They didn't realize they were facing humans who had learned to hunt in Earth's deadliest environments. By day 4, the situation had completely reversed. Human-led mixed teams were clearing the jungle methodically. The alien soldiers trained by human operators in rapid crash courses began to understand. They learned to move quietly. They learned to read terrain. They learned to use the environment instead of fighting it. General Krill became Major Lee's constant shadow, absorbing everything he could. The proud Vren warrior, engineered for perfection, realized his species had made a terrible mistake. "We bred out everything that made survival difficult," he told Lee during a night patrol. "We thought we were improving ourselves, but we were actually making ourselves weak." Lee nodded, scanning the darkness with eyes that needed minimal light amplification. "Humans kept our dangerous planet, our unpredictable weather, our deadly animals. Every generation we had to survive nature. It made us better. Your wilderness areas," Krill said. "We mocked them as primitive, but they were training grounds, the ultimate proving grounds." "The jungle doesn't care about your advantages," Lee said. "It doesn't care about your technology or your enhancements. It only tests one thing: can you adapt? Our species never stopped taking that test. That's why we're still good at it." Lieutenant Park Ji-woo coordinated the operations from her command post, using natural navigation techniques and minimal electronic communication to avoid detection. She taught alien analysts that the best intelligence came from observing the ecosystem. Animal behavior predicted weather changes. Plant growth patterns indicated underground water. The jungle told you everything if you knew how to listen. By the end of day 4, human forces were ready for the final assault on the Ravager stronghold. But now they wouldn't be going alone. They would be leading an army of alien soldiers who had learned hard lessons and were ready to apply them. The galaxy's finest warriors had entered the jungle as arrogant conquerors. They would leave as students who had learned that nature's classroom never stops teaching, and humanity had been taking those lessons for longer than any species could remember.